All right, chapter 12, the last one. This was actually my favorite chapter of all because it puts everything we've covered so far into application now. It's about the disease prevention and fueling up the body the right way. It's the detoxing, the anti-inflammatories, everything you've been doing now is going to kind of fill in those gaps of why we're doing all this. Of course, we know why you're doing all this, but definitely it's something that you definitely want to, it kind of fills everything in. On page 111 of your book, it starts the first part on detoxing. The best way I like to describe this is because you have several different organs that actually filter in your body. They filter out toxins. And the best way to look at it is that your air conditioner filters on your house really needs replacing or cleaned out twice a year to get better efficiency out of your air conditioner unit, your heating unit. You get so much more efficiency that way. Plus your electric bill is going to be down a little bit because it doesn't have to work as hard or as long. And you've got to look at your organs that way too. They do the filtering. So if you eat clean and you don't have to detox all the time, then you actually get more efficiency out of your body. You're going to have so much longevity for sure without disease. You're going to have so much more energy, so much more you can get out of your day-to-day routines. But your organs that actually filter are like your liver, your skin, your kidneys, your lymphatic, your blood, intestines, lungs. They're all different types of filtering systems, and there's all kinds of toxins that can actually build up in your body. Pesticides, food additives, packaging, all of those can actually definitely add up that we don't realize it. Even the wrapping on our meat that you buy at the grocery store, that actually can have toxins and chemicals in it as well. I know, it's crazy. All the things that can actually take place. So you want to do as much as you can to try to prevent from getting these toxins in and really reduce or avoid. And reduce or avoid, those are everything that we've listed, that we've talked about so far. You want to get that out of your day-to-day intake. Anything that's man-made, anything that's got GMOs in it, the grains, that stuff that's been messed with, your sugar substitutes, sugar additives, the preservatives, all those extra salt, the sugar alcohols if at all possible, chemicals, excessive amounts of caffeine. It all definitely helps. That helps too if you reduce that. And then focus on what to choose. Choosing your God-made foods. God knew exactly what He was doing when He created our bodies. So it's important that you fuel up with what He also created our bodies to have fuel, from. So fuel up with God-made foods. Fill up on that. Of course, I got listed there, what the liver does, liver detoxifiers, free radical detoxifiers, all different ways to definitely go into that. Now, another way to kind of help detox and stay detoxed and to prevent against diabetes, heart disease, and cancer, and to help fight off obesity is to look into the anti-inflammatory foods. This also helps to get rid of the aches and the pains, the joints and all that, and the older we get. And also if you've got any type of inflammation going on, or if you've been diagnosed with something with itis at the end, tendinitis is one of them, with inflammation of is what that means, the itis. Eating these foods will definitely help to get rid of that. And a lot of runners and walkers, joggers tend to get tendinitis quite often. I know I've gotten it in my right ankle before from running on the side of a street because it was angled instead of in the middle where it was more flat, or on a sidewalk. So I developed the tendinitis from that. So rest and lots of anti-inflammatory foods instead of anti-inflammatory drugs definitely helps out in that way. So if you look at your scale on page 113, you've got a little scale here. Really anything from your 7 on up to the 14 is known as alkaline or anti-inflammatory. These are all your God-made foods. Load up on these because these are the ones that actually help to fight off everything that's below the 7. Now, your water is right around a 7. Your blood's right around the 7 range, 6 to 8 range. And anything below that number, all the way down to a 0, is known as acidic or inflammatory. So those actually bring on inflammation, and there's sugars in this area. In this area is actually where the cancer cells are being fed. They feed off of sugar. It's that type of environment where it's all sugar, sugar, sugar. it definitely grows the cancer cells. In this area too, it brings on diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. It is very difficult to lose weight if you're consuming foods that are in this area. It brings on colds, flus, sicknesses. You know, if you're sick all the time, you need to look and see what kind of foods are you consuming. Are they the foods in the acidic area? Are you eating enough foods or consuming enough drinks that are in the more alkaline area? You can also get alkaline water that can take it on up, you know, into the 9s or possibly 10s for your pH. So that's something you might want to check, and that's just a good kind of way, general rule of thumb. Look at your list of foods right there on the 7, the 8, the 9, and the 10. You want to stay in those categories of foods and avoid anything that's below. And to kind of put this in perspective, Coca-Cola is about a 2.3 on the pH scale for acid. That's Coke. Battery acid is a 1.0. So kind of put that into perspective. It's, you know I grew up with my dad pouring Coke on a battery terminal and just kind of ate away all the corrosion around it. Well, that explains why. It's an acid. It eats it away. You can imagine what's going on in your body when you consume Coke. I did an experiment one time. I was teaching some classes at an athletic club here for several years, and I put in an uncooked chicken leg into a glass or a jar of water and another uncooked chicken leg into a glass of Coke. Put the lids on and let it sit. After about a week, actually about a week and a half, the one with the water was still just like it was when I put it in there. The one with the Coke, it's like the bone was floppy. It's like it pulled out all the calcium out of the bones. It pulled it all out and just ate it away. It's the corrosion in it. And what happened was it had the phosphoric acid in it that leaches calcium out of your bones and makes your bones very weak. I work in a dialysis clinic, and all of my dialysis patients, any type of colas definitely destroys their labs. It really messes them up and sends them into turmoil. So those are huge no-nos when it comes to dialysis, and they really should be huge no-nos when it comes to prevention, because you don't want to get on that opposite end of that spectrum like the dialysis patients are. So anyway, definitely alkaline. Go with alkaline. Your diabetes control and prevention, you know, really I'd like to sit down one-on-one with people who have diabetes to explain everything in detail, because it's so important they get it, to be empowered with how to control those blood sugars. There's a lot of hormones in our body, and one hormone we actually can control, and that's our pancreas. And that's right here in this little area, our little pancreas. That little area right there, it secretes your insulin every time you consume food, especially carbohydrates. 100% of your carbohydrates turns to sugar, some slow, some fast. So when you do consume those sugars, that pancreas shoots off the insulin into the bloodstream, takes in those blood sugars and busts on over to our muscle cells, tissues, and organs throughout our body first. And then once those are filled up, then it goes to the fat cells. Now, if you have not exercised at all, then you have no muscles to be filled up. They're already filled, so it's immediately going to be going to those fat cells. So just know that you want to limit how many carbs you do consume at one time, because it actually is going to stimulate more production out of that pancreas, and over time, the more you produce it, the more you're going to overwork it. When you overwork it, it's not going to produce the insulin that it used to produce. That means diabetes. So you definitely want to limit how much you put in your mouth at one time to prevent from overworking that pancreas. Now, anytime you overproduce the pancreas, you're going to overproduce insulin. Any excessive amount of overproduced insulin actually is stored in as fat cells. So just know that. So bottom line, across the board, diabetes, no diabetes, you should always limit how many carbs you eat in one setting. And you should always combine that with a protein, because that helps to pull that spike of blood sugars down even further, so even less insulin is actually being produced. So that's another thing to go. But diabetics also have to look at their food labels, just like we talked about earlier. One carb serving is 15 grams. So one carb, so if an item has 30 carbs in it, then you're consuming 2 carb servings. And each person is so individual. I got a general rule of thumb at the bottom down here of how many total carbs can you eat at one meal. This is across the board. So I'm just telling you across the board. It's not anything directly that you need to really, if you're trying to lose weight, it can actually needs to be a little bit lower. So this is just plain old across the board. The next page, page 115, foods that do make your blood sugars go up. Remember, 100% of your carbohydrates turns to sugar. So what's your You also want to pay close attention to how many starchy vegetables you consume, like your potatoes, your dry beans, not green beans, but dry beans, your peas, your corn, all your grains. You know, limit how much you do have of it. Grains are okay, especially if they're GMO, non-GMO, but you still want to limit how much you have of it. Too much of a good thing can end up being a bad thing. Juices and colas, woo, definitely make your blood sugars rise really quick, which surges that insulin out really quick and overproduction. So juices and colas, even if it's 100% fruit juice, it actually can end up being a bad thing because it can promote extra insulin, which will promote fat storage just from 100% fruit juice. So do keep that in mind. What impacts blood sugar levels? It's the food composition. It's the balance of your proteins, your carbs, and your fats. It's also your portion sizes. You know, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, so stay within your portion range that we've talked about. Timing of the meals is also very important too. You want to eat about every 4 to 6 hours. If you go more than 6 hours without eating while you're up moving around, it can actually wreak some havoc on your blood sugars as well. There's also some basic maintenance and prevention listed at the bottom. I'm not going to cover that in detail, but I do have that one thing highlighted, and that is always eat a protein every time you eat a carb. Cannot emphasize that enough. The next page here is the diagrams of everything. 100% of your carbohydrates turns to sugar. 100%. Your protein, about 50 to 60% of your fat turns to sugar. And I'm sorry, of your protein turns to sugar, and about 10% of your fat turns to sugar. But it all does turn to sugar. Your first source of energy that your body is going to use is the carbohydrates, because 100% of it turns to sugar. It doesn't have to work hard in order to get that sugar. How fast does it change? This kind of puts things into perspective too for diabetics and non-diabetics. If you look at the first one here, your simple carbohydrates, this would be like your liquid fruit juice, your colas, your sweets, your pies, anything that quickly dissolves, that candy bar dissolves right in. It's going to have a quick high rise in the blood sugar. It's very fast response. It's called a high glycemic food, and it's going to come back down very, very quickly. So you got the shoop, high spike, and then shoop, right back down again. So you definitely want to watch that. Your complex carbs, such as the apple, not apple juice, but the apple, it's your whole grains. It's the ones that are loaded in fiber. They're known as low glycemic, not high glycemic, so they have a very slow response, and it's very difficult for your body to break down, so you're burning more calories trying to break that down. So you're going to have much less rise in blood sugars compared to the one with a high rise, that's a fast digesting. So this is a slow. Then you have your proteins, which basically is your yellow here, and it slowly comes up. It takes about 45 minutes before your protein starts to digest, unless it's in a liquid form, like a whey protein shake. But it'll come up and spike up 50 to 60%. Doesn't really affect it, and it stretches on out for a good 6 to 8 hours. So it takes a lot of energy to break down that protein. So it's going to pull from the first source of energy, just trying to break it down. That first source of energy is your carbohydrates. That's why I always say every time you eat a carbohydrate, always have a protein with it. Because even though this blood sugar might spike up this high with a complex carb, when you combine it over here with a protein, it's actually going to pull this spike down even further, which means less insulin production, less chance of fat storage. You actually have a higher chance of a fat burn when you combine that together. Fats, you want to limit your fats. Fats take less percent of your fat turns to sugar, and it takes a good 12 to 15 hours for it to digest. But you want to limit it because too much fat puts everything in slow motion, so it's a very slow digesting, and you don't want that to happen either, because you want to keep the metabolism going. Not slow, but you want to keep it going. So combining, that's the key, is your proteins every time you eat a carb. Huge, huge, huge. Next page, 117, cancer. Now, I personally have never had cancer. My grandfather had cancer, and I've got many friends. In fact, I've got a friend that's just a couple years older than me that currently has stage 4 colon cancer. Lots of friends. I've even had some friends die. in their late 30s, early 40s of cancer. So, this is my own perspective. This is how I'm going the route that I prefer to go. I've got a friend right now that I've currently got her juicer, a cold press juicer, and she fought cancer just by juicing. So there's so many ways that you can fight cancer without radiation and chemo. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do radiation and chemo. I'm just saying that don't always believe that's the only options out there that you can actually do to help fight it. Lots of things that you can do. Eating healthy, sticking with those anti-inflammatories definitely fights off the acidic, anything that feeds the cancer cells. Avoid the sugar, that's for sure. Eating your fill of the superfoods that's listed there. If you can go without the microwave, go without the microwave because that actually kills the enzymes through the radiation in the microwave. So you definitely want to avoid that because you want to get everything you can out of that superfood. Any of your food, you want to get all you can. Of course, physical activity definitely is going to keep your body's immune system going strong. Getting a little bit of sun every day is great because it helps to keep the vitamin D activated. You just don't want to burn. Okay, early detection, seriously, for sure. Avoid any smoked or char-grilled food. That's the big thing. So if you are grilling out on a grill and something drips down, a little bit of a hamburger, pinch that little part off and chunk it. You don't want to eat that part. You're roasting marshmallows, chunk the burnt part. Get rid of the char-grilled. That's not the route you want to go because it definitely converts into carcinogen, and that increases your chances of developing cancer. There's also been some research done. The American Cancer Research says that 3.5 ounces of processed meat that's got the nitrites and nitrates added to it can increase your risk of colon cancer by 42%. So there's lots of studies that's been out since then, but you definitely want to do that. Buy organic if possible. Stick with that. Organic if you can. And de-stress and relax. That's a big key. There's also something in there that you can, number 13, something's called vitamin B17. The government doesn't allow vitamin B17 to be sold, so sometimes it's actually sold as amygdalin or laetrile, and you can get that at your local health food store. Most of them will definitely carry that. But it's found in a lot of your seeds. It has to be ground up, and it actually helps to cure cancer. I have a friend whose mother-in-law was diagnosed with cancer. She started taking amygdalin. She got accepted into the Mayo Clinic. By the time she got to the Mayo Clinic, they could not detect cancer at all. So just know there's other options there. I've also heard people going to Mexico. I don't know anything about that. But anyway, I've heard many stories about people being cured from cancer without the radiation and the chemo. So just know that. Don't be afraid to detox twice a year. I do extreme detoxes probably twice a year, even though I do eat clean 90% of the time. I'll go and probably do just a straight cleanse for like 5 days, 7 days, maybe twice a year, or especially after I do a run, because I will carb up for my runs, like a half marathon. I'll carb up for that, and I'll eat pizza or pasta, whatever I want to afterwards, because I hardly ever get that. I'll go eat it, and then I do a detox. So I'll go detox for several days just so that I can get all that out. I don't want any forms of cancer whatsoever. I just want to be healthy and strong for my kids and my grandkids. I want to be a spunky great grandma. So that's my goal there. Also use the apple cider vinegar with mother 2 to 3 times a day, 2 tablespoons. That's also a great detoxifier. Plus it's been known to help to fight off those cancer cells too. The next page is heart disease prevention and control. There's so much I can go into. First of all, if you think about how our great-grandmothers used to go out in the cotton fields and yet they would eat all kinds of crazy high-fat stuff. Well, they didn't have fast food restaurants like we have. They didn't have all the processed stuff like we have. So if we eat all the fat that they used to eat, we actually develop heart disease at an earlier age. Why? Well, if you think about it, your little arteries here become inflamed from the fast food, the processed food that we have nowadays. It's our convenience foods. It irritates the lining of our arteries, and it causes a Velcro type effect. It's inflamed. Okay? There's that itis that I was talking about. You need anti-inflammatories, but it's inflamed. So when you do eat any type of fatty food, whether it be highly marbled meat or fried or anything with fat, it's going to go in and cling to that Velcro and hold on to it. And there's when you're going to start to build up the plaque in the arteries. So you want to avoid that as much as possible. But, you want shrimp every once in a while. I mean, shrimp is great. But if you got all the inflammation going on, you're going to have some problems. So it's best to really detox for a while, clean out those arteries by eating just anti-inflammatory foods, laying off the sugar, laying off the convenience foods, all the processed foods, to have those arteries smoothed out. Total cholesterol, you want to make sure it's less than 200. Your LDLs, which is known as the bad, and the HDLs is known as the good. They have kind of like a seesaw effect. This is your LDLs, this is your HDLs. If you consume, let's just say high-fat foods, your LDLs go up. If you consume no fiber and you don't exercise at all, it goes up even more. Now you have a very high cholesterol. Well, let's just say that we want to correct our diet. So we're going to start to consume high-fiber foods. Okay, now we got rid of our high-fat foods. And now we've decided we're going to start exercising. Huge jump. Exercise actually shows that it will raise the HDLs up really, really high, but you have to get the intensity level up. You have to get the heart rate up, and you've got to clean up your diet. That's the big thing. You've got to clean it up. Triglycerides basically is the marriage of a carbohydrate and a fat together, and it's stored in a fat cell. So limit how many carbs and how many fats you eat at one meal, and that'll help cut down on your triglycerides. Be active and get really, really active, and that'll help burn up those stored triglycerides that are in those fat cells. So that's a good way to decrease your triglycerides. Of course, there's recommended diet and lifestyle changes, and a lot of that is stuff that we've already talked about. You've just got to be active. You got to shop smart. You got to eat smart. You know, just because manufacturers have it on there and they've advertised it as certain, so-and-so way does not mean it's the healthiest route to go. So just know that. The next page is foods to avoid and foods to use in moderation. Please go through that list. Lots and lots of things you can eat in moderation and lots of things you need to avoid. And a lot of that is cleaning out that pantry like we've already talked about. The next page is spices you can use without salt. It's really important you really try to limit the salt intake because that can raise up blood pressure if you already have blood pressure problems or heart disease problems. So limit the salt. Go wild with all your herbs and spices. Did you know that before medicine was created and we have all these pharmacies now, that the original medicines was from herbs? Herbs, spices and herbs, all the way back to the biblical times of frankincense and myrrh. So it all is natural. Try to go the natural way. Grow it in a pot on your deck or your patio. Very easy to grow. And some of these herbs will last year round. My rosemary, my sage basically last almost all year round. So that's another, well, it's pretty good. It'll last quite a while. The next page, 121 and 122, just list some things that you can do to modify your great-grandma's recipe, to modify Paula Deen's cookbook, you name it. You can make something that's unhealthy into healthy by making small healthy changes. For instance, butter, if you switch out 1 cup of butter with 1 cup of applesauce, actually a little bit less because all that butter does is makes it moist and kind of binds it. You just need a little bit less. It's going to do the exact same thing and you can't taste the applesauce at all. And you've got a lot less calories, 1/4 the amount of calories in it compared to that butter. So there's lots of things you can do to kind of tweak those recipes and make them healthier. Definitely make them healthier. That has actually come to the end of Chapter 2. I hope you have been doing the daily reflections. I hope you have felt a little bit of a growth, a gradual growth, because it is a step-by-step change. So I hope you have felt that along the way, not just with your food intake, but also spiritually as well. I do want to also point out the Bertles and hurdles in the back. I hope you have been working on those. It takes progress and time. You can't just boom do it overnight. You have built up so many habits through the years. You're going to have to give yourself grace to tear those down. So what you have not worked on so far, get busy. Get to working on it. What you have not mastered so far, get busy. Get working on it. You've got to get working on it. If you don't have that focus in mind, you're not going to get there. That's the big thing. So you've got those pages, and also in the very back, which you guys will probably be weighing and measuring, is your progress chart. I want you to remeasure, reweigh, and do it again, and do it again. Like every 6 to 8 weeks, redo it, recheck it, get it going. If you have access to a body fat machine, that's the key right there. I'd much rather see inches lost and body fat going down than that number changing on the scale. So focus on that. So those are really good. Also, the very last thing, I hope you guys do or have taken the chances through the weeks to fill out the very back, the little survey on all the different chapters, your input, the positives, the negatives, whatever is on your mind, any advice on how I can get across to make this better, to present it to people. So would love and appreciate any information. You do not need to put your name on it at all. I just need that information to help improve and help to make it better for other people. And I hope you guys have had a wonderful and blessed time. I have absolutely loved doing this and working with you guys. And it's been a blessing for me. It really has. It's taught me a lot as well. So I hope you guys have a wonderful, happy, healthy journey ahead. Have a good one.